So all of the forge weapons, the Vex forge weapons from Mercury, have now been available to make, which begs the question, are any of them actually good? And yeah, actually, some of them are, and I want to talk about them quickly, along with some thoughts about weapons and perks in general at this point in Destiny. We'll start with what I think are the top tier weapons of the bunch, which include Null Calamity 9, Traveler's Judgement 5, and Perfect Paradox. Null Calamity 9, in my opinion, is the best gun that you can get from the Forge. Auto rifles are really good right now, and Null Calamity happens to be an auto rifle, so just by default, it's solid. Comparing to other auto rifles of its kind, like Ghost Primus, Martyr's Make, and Hardlight, Null Calamity 9 has great range, slightly above average stability, good handling, and top tier reload speeds, with enough flexibility to fine-tune it to any way that you want. Its main perk is Zen Moment, which, even though PC already has very smooth recoil, I feel like I can actually notice. This makes it a great PvP option as long as you're firing for extended periods of time, as it doesn't kick in instantly. Zen Moment doesn't matter as much for something like PvE though, but it's not harmful either. Calamity 9 has good stats, so it's a good gun. The Traveler's Judgement 5 sidearm is also pretty good as far as sidearms can possibly be good, matching with the likes of Last Hope or Last Dance, and exceeding them in certain stats. I have historically not been the hugest fan of Headseeker, but considering that you're not really going to be hitting triple crits all of the time in PvP, it's not completely worthless. The reason I don't like Headseeker is because the bonus damage you get in no way makes up for having to hit to the body first, and it's always smarter to go for a triple headshot, even if it's not that likely. The recoil pattern of the weapon is pretty interesting though, where the second and third shots will basically always stack on top of each other, but always above the first shot. Although when I took a closer look at Last Hope, it does practically the same thing, so I guess it's not that interesting. Perfect Paradox is a pretty good shotgun as far as shotguns go. The only other shotguns that are really used are Hawthorns and maybe now Zenith of your kind, at least legendary shotguns. Acreus is used for a much different reason. All of these shotguns share a common trait. They're all full auto. Therefore, that almost automatically puts it in the top tier position for shotguns. Stick with rifle barrel, and you'll be mowing down everything in your way. Moving to some not top tier weapons, Soul Pariah 6, definitely not in the top tier, but it is a gun that I enjoy using because I really like 600 RPM submachine guns, and this one can be converted into a 600 RPM submachine gun, although that does limit your build capabilities on the weapon. The main perk, unfortunately, isn't anything special, Grave Robber, where melee kills reload a portion of the magazine. The 900 RPM variant to me isn't anything super special. It's usable and definitely more usable on PC, but there are other options, much like there are other options for the 600 RPM variant. The only reason I think this weapon is good is because you can make it 600 RPM. That's it. Compared to other 600 RPM submachine guns, I'll probably end up taking one of the others. The Conqueror 2, the kinetic 900 RPM submachine gun, has kill clip. Sure, kill clip's very good, but so does a 600 RPM submachine gun that has existed since the launch of the game. And I think that 600 RPM submachine guns are better than 900 RPM ones on average. The sword and a lot of the high impact, low rate of fire weapons continue to be not too great in general, or at least nothing that really excites me. And everything else is neither hot garbage or super insanely good, and is going to come down a lot to personal preference. Most of the guns are replaceable by other guns that already exist, but if you like using one of the forge weapons over a meta weapon and you're doing well with it, I'm certainly not going to stop you from using it. Finally, there are a lot of contrasting opinions about the West of Sunfall hand cannon and the 180 RPM hand cannons in general. If there's enough interest, I can maybe devote a full video to the topic, but I'm not really into this archetype too much. To talk specifically about this gun, the way the gun recoils makes it so you can't see your target until the very last split second before you can fire the gun again. And for sustained fire against a target, I don't really like that. The damage on the gun is not great as you would expect from a high rate of fire hand cannon, and that really shows in PvP, boasting one of the slower time to kill times in PvP. In content that doesn't really matter, public events, lost sectors, it's fine to use. It still one-shots a decent amount of stuff, but I don't really plan on utilizing this gun. To me, hand cannons are about precision firing, and having the feeling that I need to shoot really fast with this gun is not what I'm looking for in a hand cannon experience. If I'm not firing as fast as possible, then to me, there's no reason to use it over a slower hand cannon. Overall, I really liked the concept of the Forge because I really enjoy crafting professions in games a lot, and this is the closest thing we've ever had to crafting in Destiny. I'm also very glad that Bungie didn't make it a very short grind to get the items like I thought they were going to. It wasn't hard or anything, but I had to play for a while to get these items, and I liked having an excuse to go do strikes again. I liked having a reason to go do something. This brings us to the next portion of the video. Something about Destiny 2 loot is kind of boring, and I can't really put my finger on why, and this next half of the video is going to ramble a lot, and I'm sorry. None of these Vex guns are really exciting in terms of their performance because none of them outclass anything we have available right now. Most don't even compete. Now, in House of Wolves, 2 years ago, a new system was put in place that allowed players to bring back past weaponry up to current levels. Infusion was not a thing back then. This led to some really powerful weapons that were initially left behind to be bumped up to current levels, and since none of the loot in House of Wolves was overwhelmingly better, this led to a very bland loot experience for months. This is a very similar thing as to what's happened with these Forge guns and a lot of other Curse of Osiris guns. There are very few weapons that are considered good because they need to be, without a shadow of a doubt, 100% better than what we already have. But it's not like this wasn't the case in Destiny 1 either, because we've had this exact same situation happen. I'm not trying to make this seem like this is a Destiny 2 exclusive issue. One way of solving this is to have truly seasonal items where things can't be leveled up and we're forced to use the new items. I didn't say it was a good or the best solution though. Does anyone else just feel like loot is boring right now? I've rewritten this part of the video like 4 times and I still can't put into words why I feel like loot is just not exciting. The archetype of a weapon in Destiny 2 matters a lot more than the perks, but this was also the case in Destiny 1 unless you were comparing the exact same weapon archetypes against each other. Better Devils versus Living Memory. Do you even know where Living Memory comes from? Positive Outlook versus Prosecutor, Nameless Midnight versus Any Scout, Anti-OD versus Adjudicator. But you do that same comparison with Destiny 1 weapons, it's the same situation. I don't want to make this video about random rolls either because we've had that discussion, and because while I think the removal of random rolls does reduce the excitement about loot, it's maybe not the core of the issue. There's something about perks that make them matter and not matter at the same time. There's about 5 perks in the game that you want on your gun. Kill Clip, Outlaw, Rampage, Explosive Rounds, and Full Auto for certain weapons. That's about it. You can have a great auto rifle like No Calamity 9, but because it doesn't have something like Kill Clip on it, something like Positive Outlook is probably going to be considered better, even though they're more or less the exact same gun and their performance is nearly the same for the average player. So that's a situation where the perk matters. But I can succeed with Null Calamity anyway because it's a great gun on its own, so now the perk doesn't matter as much because it's not the main driver of the weapon's power or success. We had a greater number of perks in Destiny 1, both on the high and low ends of their quality, but the ratios were about the same as they are now in Destiny 2, or feel about the same. Raid loot, in particular, is not very exciting, but again, it's not like Destiny 1 was pumping out a ton of hits either. In a pure RPG, or an MMORPG, what makes a weapon better than another? Typically, it's the damage it does, or the effect it provides. We don't have this in Destiny, at least not anymore, where raid loot makes you more powerful than non-raid loot. Did you know that raid weapons have 2 premier perks on them and not just 1? If you didn't, well, I don't blame you, because the raid loot, historically speaking, has been pretty bland when compared to the rest of the pack, And no, having 1 or 2 weapons out of a pool of 9 or 10 isn't a great track record. While Midnight CoO does provide a better effect than most other hand cannons in terms of the potential damage it can provide, it doesn't feel as impactful as maybe a more traditional RPG weapon upgrade should feel. Out of all of the King's Fall and Wrath of the Machine weapons combined, I used 1 weapon with regularity, not including the raid exotics. Leviathan has about 3 to 4 guns that are top tier. But when most are replaceable by guns that you get from the end of a Crucible match or a strike, it doesn't really make them feel special. We don't have a system where raid weapons do more damage than dungeon weapons, and dungeon weapons do more damage than vendor weapons that do more damage than blues. The game's combat doesn't balance itself like an RPG. You naturally are going to have a design clash between shooter and RPG elements because the things that make shooters feel good are not exactly the same things that make RPGs feel good. Not everything that works in an RPG to make loot exciting will work in a shooter. Borderlands and The Division are shooters balanced as RPGs. They're more RPG focused. Destiny is not RPG focused, and Bungie wants Destiny to be a shooter first and foremost, which is going to lead to that design clash. Maybe somewhere in this rambling I made sense, but yeah, loot's just kind of boring right now. I can't pinpoint the exact reasons as to why. Maybe it's a combination of all the things I talked about. But as a whole, Curse of Osiris loot has been pretty uneventful, and there's not much excitement surrounding it. This has been somewhat of an ongoing trend in the game, though. It is not just a Curse of Osiris issue. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.